Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen Era.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership.
Hello, Christeen. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I've been getting to talk about business a lot lately and leadership and strategic planning and all of that stuff just gives me a ton of energy. How are you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing much better. Today. It's been a long week. I had the dreaded COVID. It came back from my England trip. Spent 12 wonderful days in England, but came back and got the COVID. But now I'm recovering, so super excited about that. But today has been a much better day. Excited to be here.
I saw some of your pictures on Facebook of your and Trina's trip to England, and I was like, oh my gosh, like Steve looks so at home. Like he just, it was almost like you were in your little shire of, it was just seeing you in all the little pictures. And I'm like, he's so British.
Well, it was exciting. We got to visit the church where my 12th great grandparents got married around 98. And then my 11th great grandfather was baptized in this church, at 16, 18. So it was pretty cool to see. And the church has been in existence for about 1,000 years. So that was really cool to see. My 11th great grandfather came over to Massachusetts in 1638. So some history there.
Yeah. And you have history in the area that you live where your family, since then they have been there and y'all are still there.
Yeah. So I'd like to think I've been entrepreneurial my whole life, but my 11th great grandfather and his brother, they started the tannery business up in Woburn, Massachusetts, or in Woburn, and that industry lasted 300 years until the 1970s. From 1640 until 1970, the industry was in Woburn, Massachusetts. So quite a long time. And so they have been, that entrepreneurial kind of activator spirit has been in my family for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. So I definitely fit into the English culture. I definitely like the dress and the look like a person from England, but we had a great time, and that trip was planned for about a year, and we definitely did a lot of stuff. So
how many of your little hats did you bring?
I only brought one hat with me. I brought 3 home. I actually got a real Temple of Doom hat there from the actual movie,
the Indiana Jones movie.
Indiana Jones hat.
Harrison Ford
hat from the company that actually makes the Indiana Jones hats.
Oh, how fun.
So I got a certificate of authenticity and everything. It comes in its own hat box. It's the company that makes it. They measure your head. And it has it's like a real deal hat with the real lining. Yeah. So
the little things that bring us joy.
that was a lot of fun, but it was fun. Went to London, went to Norwich because I'm from Norwich, Connecticut. We stopped at the Chamber of Commerce and we got a tour of the Chamber in Norwich, Norwich, England, and they were thrilled to see us. We're the only people from Norwich, Connecticut to stop in the Norwich, UK Chamber. That was really neat to see. And we went to Canterbury and Cambridge and ate meat pies and full English breakfast. And we had teas and went to cathedrals. And so it was a great time.
That sounds fun. Definitely a bucket list item.
It was a big trip. It was the first country that was not Finland or Mexico that me and my wife had been to, because she's half Finnish. So we've been to Finland multiple times, and Mexico was our winter vacation trip for many years. So those were the two countries we've been to, not counting Canada, because we've been to Canada a couple of times, but you just drive to Canada from New England. So, but like foreign countries. So it was fun. We learned a lot. Don't go during when it's a bank holiday, 3-week vacation right before school starts. Don't go to London then.
So when you guys went.
Yeah, very, very, very busy. But today's episode on the podcast, thanks everyone for listening to my stories. It's about Clifton Strength, Gallup Clifton Strengths. Pretty excited. Gallup launched 3 additions to their reports. They have launched a leadership report. They've launched a manager's report and a selling report or salesperson report. And you don't have to retake your Gallup assessment, your Clifton Strengths assessment. You can sign up for this report, and it will actually line up to your existing assessment. And it will just tell you how you can line up your existing assessment to leading with your strengths, how you can line it up to managing with your strengths, or how you can line it up to selling with your strengths. And I have taken all 3 of those. They are very powerful. I'm coaching some people around those right now, and they're very powerful reports. I'm working with some teams right now around those, and I'm super excited about those. And we're going to talk about, some of the things I've learned over the past couple of years about strengths in general, and, what we should be focusing on. And one of the things that I really, when I first got into Gallup Clifton Strengths, was focusing heavily on individual strengths and talents. And one of the things that I learned, Gallup really talked about this quite a bit this year, was not focusing so much on individual themes and talents, but more focusing on domains. And at first I was like, I didn't get it at first, but now that I've been coaching, and I've had a number of clients who have taken the assessment multiple times, which Gallup does not want anyone to do, because when people do it, they end up with the same domain themes. The themes and talents and strengths might switch a little bit around, but they end up with the same domain themes. So that's why it's not really necessary to take the assessment again. So one of the things I just want to do is revisit some of the domains. So the domains are executing, which is like the theme that makes things happen. So if you're a leader, you're going to hear a leader will say things like, this is, we get shit done. I don't know if you've ever heard a leader say that.
GSDers.
That executing theme, right, Christine?
Yep. Those are my people, those GSDers. Yep. I'm like, all day.
Right. Or we lead by example, right? And that example is by doing, right? It's the doing theme. And another domain is relationship themes. There are themes that help you. Relationship theme is a theme that helps you build strong relationships that help. It helps a team hold together, stay together. Mm-hmm. And this will say that, the quality of someone's life is directly proportionate to the quality of their relationships.
Yeah.
And that is someone that has that strong relationship building theme.
And they can feel a lot more with the connection, and they can be a little bit more sensitive about maybe how things are said, so there could be a different level of awareness, I think, with the relationship, heavier theme.
And what will happen is you'll have people that will have, so in their top 5 and even in their top 10, they're going to have 2 dominant usually of these domains, right? You're going to have executing in relationship, or influencing and strategic, or a combination of these 2. And I think Christeen's team leads with executing and influencing. or executing and strategic thinking, depending on which team member. But like one of your team members, she leads with that executing and influencing her top 5. She leads with influencing in her top 5, but executing in her top 10.
Yes.
So it's important to pay attention to your top 10. So in the reports I was mentioning earlier, leading with the leadership report, manager's report, and the selling report, they measure your top 10 because that's really going to give you the most comprehensive of what domain that you're going to lead with.
Yeah.
So the next domain is the influencing domain. It's the least likely domain that you're going to lead with. The influencing domain theme helps you take charge, speak up, and make sure that others are heard. It's the domain I lead with. I have 6 out of my top 10 are influencing. It is, like I said, it's the least likely domain to have. It can be the least likely understood domain. And there's some bias to some of the strengths. Woo is one of the top influencing themes, and I have experienced some woo bias during my training and even at some other locations. People misunderstand woo. Woo is an acronym for winning others over. It can be construed as shallow and not
attention seeking.
Attention seeking. And it really depends on, and we've talked about this on other podcasts, there's immature strengths and talent themes and mature talent strengths and themes. So it depends on the maturity of the woo, and it also depends on the maturity of all our talent themes and strengths. So if it's immature, it shows up one way, and if it's mature, it shows up as another way. So how an immature woo would show up is attention seeking, right? So we had a situation where someone was sharing with us how they would go to this resort in Mexico and everybody would know them because they were just so, outrageous. And so they tell jokes, they would be just loud and everybody knew them. And, I would go to the same or similar type of hotel and resort, and I would know people, but it's because I would ask them questions about their families and their kids and how long they've worked there and about themselves. And I would know them just because of getting to know them as a person, because I have high individualism, not because I was loud, obnoxious, even though I have been at times, but not in this situation. So the reason my woo with them was more mature, his woo was more immature. And immature woos might never ask questions about people. And then the last domain is the fourth one, is strategic thinking. This theme helps you absorb and analyze information that informs better decisions. And strategic thinking, people love that. Love information. They love data. They love the truth. They love to get that information. And so before I was talking about mature and immature. So if you have a high strategic person in their top 5, they can come across as negative because they often see what's wrong. And when they communicate that, if it's immature, they can come across as being seen as the smartest person in the room. When they communicate that to people, they can almost be like brass and hard, and it can be like people don't want to be around them. But if it's mature, it can become across as coaching, helpful input, uplifting. It can come across as supportive. So it can be the same talent theme, same strength, and whether it's mature or immature, it can be construed in 2 very different ways. So that's why it's important to have coaching around this, because what we want to do is be in a constant state of maturing our themes and talent themes. We want to be aware of where we are with them. And that awareness starts from where we are right now, and then making sure we want to build where we want them to go.
Yeah, and from my experience, because I've been working in this, the Gallup strengths and in my company, I want to say it's been about a 7-year journey now, and and then Steve got certified in becoming a Clifton Strengths coach, which has given me even more insight because we talk about it quite a bit. I'm involved in the workshops and around it quite a bit where, he's coaching and teaching on it. So I have, a direct, courtside seat to all of this. And there are different ways that a strength can show up in an immature way. And what it really depends on is the person's journey in life, right? Like, what are their skills? What are their experiences? What have they learned? What are they not aware of? Right. So they're going to show up. And just hearing them talk about strategic, because I lead with strategic and I end with strategic. I've got 2 strengths, my number 1 and my number 10, and they're strategic. But I lead with strategic. That's, what my domain is. And one of the things that I realized was strategic that was immature, and it took me quite a bit to get there, was strategics have this gift of kind of juggling fire, right? It's like it can energize them. They can handle a lot of things at like one time, and that makes them happy, But other people that don't have that strength, it's going to exhaust them. So one, there could be this immaturity of, hey, my strategic really loves to juggle fire, and not being aware of how it's exhausting the people around them or making it really challenging for their team members to support them or even execute or get things done. And there's another side of it to where, as I matured my strategic, that juggling fire shifted for me. So I went from the whack-a-mole juggling fire, right, to where I can get a lot done with intention, but it doesn't have to be chaos. So now when people come at me and they're just randomly juggling fire, I'm like, this is exhausting. And now I know what it feels like, to live in that immaturity of strategic or even be around someone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I must have been exhausting for years to people, are very hard to work with. But it's an awareness of maturing the strengths and allowing, I think the other strengths, what helped me change that behavior was I let my other strengths show up to support my strategic strength.
Hi, it's Steve with Green Profit Academy. I was just reading a Harvard Business Review study that showed people who have written down goals and plans make 10 times more money over a 10-year period than people who don't write their goals and plans down. And really, that's why I'm so excited to announce the Green Profit Academy Mind Your Own Business Retreat. This is going to be the 3rd retreat we're putting on. It's going to be held in Granville, Tennessee at the Wildwood Resort and Marina. It's going to be on November 4th to November 8th. And we're going to work on not only your 1 year, but your 1 to 5 year business plan and goals. So you're going to be so far ahead of people who don't have written down goals and plans. We are doing this because we want your business to be far more successful than you ever imagined. And it all starts with goals and plans. So join us this year, November 4th to November 8th, for the Mind Your Own Business Retreat. Let's see. Come on, sign up. I'm going to put the link to sign up in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you there. It's time to get serious about your business. Now's the time to start.
Yes, allowing those other strengths to step in and support them. And that's one of the things that, I've really noticed is we'll have sandwiching strengths. Like sometimes you'll have activator and discipline right next to each other. And I'll kind of explain the activator is kind of the go strength, right? And that's the gas pedal. And then you'll have deliberative or discipline. Deliberative is kind of like the break, so it will slow people down, and or discipline, it will slow someone down to get them to think about it take the time to do it. Where activator just is like, go. Don't think, just act. And so sometimes you'll have strengths that will support your other strengths to take the time to do the right thing. And kind of acknowledging your other strengths and how they can contribute to each other really is a big part of that. So one of the other things that I've really noticed, and we talked about this recently, about our strengths and our talents is, and how they show up in our company is, when we're not operating in our strengths, in our top 10, that is when a lot of stress can show up in our bodies. It can show up in our lives. It can show up in our businesses. So we're trying to figure out, why is this not right? Why does this not feel right? So we'll start reading books and we'll start listening to like business gurus or other health gurus. And we're like, okay, I'm going to do what that guy said. I'm going to do what this guy said. I'm going to do what this lady said on the podcast. I'm going to do what this, guy said on this podcast. I'm going to read this book. And, that didn't work. And this didn't work. And it's because we're trying to live their lives and run their businesses in their strengths. And it's still not working. It still doesn't feel right. And we go on and on and on. And the reality is, until we start living and running our lives and our businesses in our strengths, from our strengths, we're always going to have that sense it doesn't feel right. It's not our life. It's not who we are. It's not where we belong. And the day we can step into ourselves and step into our strengths and step into who we are, it opens up a whole new world. Imagine the feeling of taking off these blinders and taking off wondering of what's wrong with me and why can't I figure it out, to stepping into what's right with me. And wow, what opportunity do I have if I can just be myself every day, right? How perfect can I be if I can just show up as who I am every day?
Yeah. And I've seen this, with talking with other teams like that you've been working on strengths coaching with, and we've been working on, leadership coaching with, and we'll sit down and have a conversation. And I think a great example is there was an exercise that we were doing in a recent workshop. And this person's strengths, she was saying, I love my job and I hate my job. And I was like, tell me more about that. And so, and we weren't even, I think, working on strengths at that point. I think we were working on systems and processes. And so she started sharing that there was this level of unknown and she never knew what she was going to get. And things just came out of left field. And so she just always felt like, she was having to kind of duck and, hide or dodge or pivot. And, but she was trying to really do a good job with customer service. So one of the things I asked her, I was like, well, what's showing up for you here, right? And one is like, she has responsibility. She has relator. She has individualism. Trying to remember some of the other strengths that she has in hers. But what it was telling me, what she was sharing with me was that the reason why she loved her job is, she loved working with the people she was working. She loved what outcome she could create, but she was really struggling with the process. And what we realized was there was not a process in place to support her strengths to show up the way that they do. And so we kind of went through, okay, so, are you putting out kind of like some expectation of who you are to these people? Do they know that you're on their team and that you're there to support them, which would really support her relator and her individualism, that relationship, domain. And then, are they aware of the process that you're trying to achieve, what the end looks like? And some of the steps, she's like, none of this exists. So she didn't feel that she could really be responsible and communicate, and nothing was being communicated of what she was going to do for them and how she could show up to help them and be responsible to solve their problems. And it was creating this friction too with her relationship domain, because she wasn't given the opportunity to really connect and support these people because they didn't really know how she was showing up. and they were just showing up mad. And she's like, but wait, like, I'm trying to have a good relationship with you. So once we kind of unpacked that and realized the process wasn't supporting her strengths, like, you could just see the weight fall off of her shoulders. And she's like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to get this in place and fixed, and this is going to change everything. And it just really connected with her, but she felt it every day.
So her blinders were off. She's like, I live in a relationship, right? So instead of saying, what's wrong with me? Why can't I connect through these processes that have been given to me? She's like, I live in a relationship. So let's develop these relationships with these clients. And they can live in relationship once they realize she's there for them. And that's a perfect example. And I was there, and I remember almost feeling the tension being lifted from her, right? And it was an amazing process that you worked with her through that. So realizing that her domain that she lives and leads with is relationships, and the relationship domain just opened her whole world up, right? And that's what taking the Clifton Strengths Assessment does. It opens our eyes. And especially as leaders, it's like, okay, I lead with influencing. So I'm not going to ever be an executing leader. I'm not going to be that doing leader ever. So just stop it. I'm not going to ever create an Excel sheet for you. I'm not going to do, extensive reports for you. I will never do a report for you. I have people that will do reports for you. And it will just never be. If you want I will get things going. I will talk. I will maximize things. I will develop people. I will grow things. But there are other things I will cheerlead. I will get all things going and maximize, motivate, and encourage. But I will not do anything that will take executing and strategic talents at all.
Yes. And I know this. I know this. So, I always joke, I'm like, I do all this stuff. Steve just shows up for the party, and so that's one of the things that I think is important. I heard, the other day, someone was talking about their challenges and in their partnership that they're trying to develop in their business. And I heard all these things that they were sharing and all these challenges. And the one thing that I came back to was the expectations this individual has for this partner are not fitting their strengths. So, that's something that I think has really helped me in our journey of our partnership is I know who you're never going to be. I know how you're never going to show up. I know it's not intentional. It's just not in your strengths. You're not doing it to be like, screw you, you do all this work. I know where you're going to show up. So I try to create that space for you to show up and do your best. And you don't get all up in my business of all the execution and the task and the details. You're like, that's a Christeen thing. But you know where I'm going to show up because we're aware of each other's strengths. But I think we also support each other in, our strengths where we do falter or we're immature in our strengths or, something's kind of showing up a little bit extra. And we're like, hey, and I know you've helped me with this. How can we tone that down? How can we bring less to the table? Because as a strategic, I'm like, we need a dozen things. These dozen things are amazing. And you're like, yes, for other strategics, they would love this. Okay, but we're not everybody's strategic, Christeen. Let's pick 2 or 3. And maybe that might be too much. Let's start with picking 2 or 3, and then we'll see, how much people can digest. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. We'll do that, but I get so excited. And so I'm like, let's bring all 12. We need a dozen.
Right. And you're not wrong. It's just everyone else is not ready for that. And that's one of the things with your talent themes and strengths, you're especially in business and, you're ahead of other people. They need to catch up with you in certain, in certain ways, and especially in business, like development and business strategy and business strategic thinking, because they're just not that's not their strength. Right. So when you're presenting that, they're just not there. And I'm like, okay, let's just tone that down. And you're like, okay, we can roll that out later, but we need to I think you've even said it best, right? Gold dust, not the gold
Mhm.
bar.
Yeah, let's not kill them with throwing gold bars at them. Let's just sprinkle some of that little gold fairy dust and make
Just
some
a little
magic.
bit, just a little bit at a time. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it does. And that's like one of the things that I've seen my friends struggle with, some of the younger people that I've mentored over the years, reading all these books, trying to find this answer and trying to find the next thing. And they do it with their managers. So instead of having their managers test through Clifton Strength Assessment, aiming their managers' strengths, and they're developing their managers to give their managers these other books to read, and there's other books to read, and these other books to read, and these podcasts to listen to. And then they're like, oh, my business is still struggling. I'm like, it's your managers. No, it's not. My managers are great. Then 3 years go by. I'm like, it's your managers. And they're like, no, it's not my managers. It's this. I had them read these other books. I'm like, let's just align their strengths. And so it's the same conversations, and they're still not coming to grips with, let's just take what's great about the people you have and align it and make them awesome and let them live in who they are. Like you gave that example. Let's live their relationship. Let them lead in the relationship instead of giving them more fantasy books to read written by people that we don't really even know. Let's live with the people we know, we work with every day, ourselves, the person we wake up and look in the mirror every day. Let's start there with that person. Let's make them the best leader. So that's kind of that's why I get so excited about Clifton Strengths, because if we want to have the biggest impact on the world, it always starts with one person.
Yeah, and letting that person be the best of who they are. And I've heard business owners share that they're like, oh, this seems like a lot of work. This Clifton Strengths leadership, the strengths leadership seems like a lot of work. And really, in my experience, it's easier, right? It's so much easier than doing all the things to like lead and manage and and I love processes and systems. Like, don't get me wrong, like that's like my Wheaties, right? I'm like, give that to me. It energizes me. I'm going to solve this problem. We're going to get there. But that Clifton Strengths, it really makes that peopling easy because we understand, what's showing up for them, where are the friction points, why are they frustrated, why is success not happening the way that we want it to, what can we fix, and it's more of how can we let them show up as their best self, and what does that look like. And we had some interesting experiences where we had one manager who led with executing. And we had one manager that led with relationship. And the interesting thing after coaching both of them, that the thing that they were upset with about each other was the same thing, right? It was exactly the same thing, which was just kind of ironic. I'm like, wait, you're mad at this other manager and disappointed because of this. And then I'm hearing that the manager is mad at you and disappointed because of this. It's the same thing. It was just showing up differently for them.
Right. Yes. Yep.
And they were both wanting the same outcome.
What do we want? Right. There's that tough conversation, right? What do we want? They both wanted the same outcome. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's so funny. It's so amazing when we can operate, and it does. So it takes a little time up front, but it's kind of like, we spend a lot of time in landscape design over the years. We want the right plant in the right place. That's like rule number one in design, right? So if we want to succeed in design, we want to make sure that we have, what zone are we in, right? What's the shade and sun requirements, right? What's the water and nutrient requirements? Can this plant take full sun? Does it need partial shade? What's the drainage? What zone? We can't put a zone 5 plant in zone 9 or zone 8, right? So this is very much similar to that, right? We want to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right places and we're putting the right skill sets, but we're also, them immature and mature. But that doesn't mean people can't be like, can you be a leader if you're in your relationship domain? Absolutely. Can you be a salesperson? If you have relationship, absolutely. Some of the best salespeople we have are relationship. Some of the best salespeople we have are strategic thinking. It's about how do we take that and aim it and make it the best that that person can be. So I've had coaching for over 30 years. I've been in business for 40 years. I've had coaching for over 30 years. Some of the worst coaching consultants I've had have been people that have been coaching, consulting me from their strengths. And I can't follow their direction because I don't have their strengths and talents. The best
Yes.
coaching and consultant I've had is people that have coached and consulted me to use my strengths and talents. And that's where I've had the most success. And that's what Gallup does. That's what Clifton Strengths does right away. It's like, we're going to coach you from your strengths, right? So that's why they've succeeded. Over 34 million people have taken the assessment. And that's why I'm so excited now that Gallup has the sales report, manager report, and the leadership report, because now these reports give people the ability to take what they do at work and really put it into play in a much more thorough, like daily kind of way. And it really lines it up with that.
Yeah. And I can't help but, my mind strategically automatically goes to operations and then financial profitability, right? And the analogy that you're sharing with, we go out and we buy plants and, it's this zone and that zone. And we're so into, making sure that this plant that we buy is going in the right place. It's going to get the right light, the right water, it's in the right zone, all these things. And we'll spend, $6 to $20 on a plant. And we put all this thought and effort into making sure, oh, this is right. This is the right, all these things. But a team member, which has a higher ROI on it, we're not putting that attention to detail into this team member and go, is this the right role? Is it the right processes? Is it right? Right. It's kind of like, is it the right zone? Is it the right, amount of sun, all these things. But a team member hiring, retaining, onboarding, retaining, training, all that stuff, they're a higher investment. They're not $20, $50, right? We're talking comparable to a year or two salary when we have turnover on an employee. So, why not put the same effort into understanding what's the right environment or the right tools that this person needs and having a better understanding for this person to thrive, like we do with our plants.
Yeah. It's really like the ROI. So Clifton Strength, Gallup, the last poll they released, I think just last week. So strength-based companies are 23% more profitable. So, that's like an annuity, right? I mean, that's in perpetuity, 23% more profitable. And so you have that kind of return without hiring more people, without investing in more equipment, without adding new services. So if you're going to get a 23% higher net profit without adding an employee, buying more equipment, advertising, adding additional clients, I mean, just by investing in your current staff and aiming their natural talent themes, I mean, it's a win-win. And, I think a lot of it has to do with less turnover, because people stay where they're appreciated and where they have less stress. And people who have their natural talent themes aimed and appreciated, they have less stress and they don't leave. And I think that just ends up producing higher profits.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen a huge difference, in how productive I am, how engaged I am. My team, my team's highly productive. They're focused. They're high executors, and they are working from their strengths. Like, we have moved people around to make sure that they're, are changing their tasks, to make sure that they're working from their strengths. And when someone struggles, I look at, I can't help but think, like, are they working from their strengths? And is it a maturity or immaturity thing? Like, how, what do we need to be aware of and what can we learn? And, that can be a game changer with just the relationship and creating coaching opportunities and conversations with that person.
Oh yeah, huge game changer.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for everyone for joining us on today's podcast talking about Clifton Strengths and the new reports that Gallup released, Clifton Strength Report, leading with leading the manager's report for leaders, for managers, and for selling. So thank you very much for joining us on this podcast, and we look forward you joining us on the next podcast.
Thanks, and I want to make sure I'll share in the show notes. So Steve is going to be on an upcoming summit where he's going to be presenting and speaking on leading from your strengths. So I will put that link in our show notes, and that is happening the first week of October. So hopefully you can join us. There's going to be lots of really great information in the summit on leadership, and Steve will be speaking early in the summit on the strengths, leadership, and Gallup strengths.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.